Hey guys, it's Dan, and in today's tutorial we'll be building a Geode starter home. Please keep in mind that this is not a step-by-step tutorial. When working with something as organic as a geode, each build will turn out differently. This is rather a guideline of things to follow in order to build yourself a home within a geode. Now let's get into the tutorial. The first step, which is preparation, will be locating a geode. The second step of preparation will be clearing around the geode and making sure that there's no blocks covering the front of the geode or around it so you have space for building. Preferably, I would find a geode that has an open face. If you can't find one that has an open face, that's alright. You can still have an entry point in the geode. I also recommend saving the coordinates of the geode that you've discovered or making sure you have an easy way of getting down to your geode. These are the blocks that you will need to gather in order to build the interior of the geode. These are the items and blocks that you may need if you wish to decorate further within your interior. Step 1 of the construction process is creating the layout. Because the geode is organic and each geode has a different shape, this isn't an exact tutorial. Depending on the size of your geode will depend on how much space you have to create a layout, and thus how much space you have to create a home. The geode that I am working with is a decent size, which means we have more space to work with. To begin your layout, you will want to add levels to the interior of the geode, like so. Sometimes breaking the geode is necessary. Lining your geode might look something like this. It's not a perfect shape or a cylinder, it's simply lining the geode so that you have a walkway around the rim of the geode. Now that you've made your rim, you can fill it in a little more until you have a almost full layer. I would leave a square in the center of your first layer so that you can go down into a deeper layer. Working on the second layer, I would add stairs like this so that the bottom areas don't feel as cramped as they would be without the stairs. I would then use trapdoors to fill in them. Now that you have an entry hole and a nice layout for the first floor, we can begin putting more structure around the hole. We're going to add railings with trapdoors. Be sure to place the trapdoors like this, with a block here. Going down into the hole, we'll place a block here, and then a trapdoor like this, and like this. Now that you're in the lowest floor of the geode, you might want to carve it out so you have more space. You can use the extra geodes that you mined while expanding your space to replace any areas where there isn't geode. We can now add ladders to the backs of these trapdoors so that we have a way up and down. We now have our first floor and our second floor. Now we can work on the third floor. Placing trapdoors like this. Placing ladders on the backs. We put a stair here with a ladder on the other side. You will then use spruce slabs to create the third floor. Using spruce trapdoors at the edges to make it look like it's tapered. Now that we have the third floor built up, we can add rails to the edges, using oak trapdoors as the edges. You may have to adjust how you place the trapdoors to ensure that you get a snug fit with the railings. Like so. Now that we have each floor laid out, we can work on the front of the geode, which will be one of the entrances. The front of this geode is rather exposed, so we have a lot to work with. We will need to add structure so it doesn't look strange. With a geode like this, we'll have to add pillars here on either side so that the geode doesn't look unbalanced or like it's going to cave in on itself. Now that we've framed the front entrance, we can add glass, decorations, or a door, and possibly a stairway or a ladder to get up to the front of the geode. Placing the doors like this, adding a front porch, we can also add more structure at the bottom here so this doesn't look strange. Adding walls here and there. Add windows to the front of the build. You can also add a pressure plate here on the inside for ease of access. You can also add it on the outside if you want, but I prefer not to so you don't have any unwelcome guests. Since the front of this geode is particularly open, we can either add more windows here for extra viewing, or to break up the monotony, we can add an awning. To keep the front of the building interesting and not all spruce, we've added dark oak stairs and slabs to create an awning to break up the build. If you want to add support to the awnings, you can do so like this. These forward though. You can also add glass at the bottom here, or if you prefer, you can add fences or a railing to have an open balcony. Now that we have the facade of our geode house, you will have to decide whether you want to have a ladder here or stairs. You can create stairs like this, if that's what you choose. Now that we have a front entrance to our geode, it is much easier to access it from within the cave. Now that our geode is secure, we can work on the interior. To not limit ourselves to only the interior of the geode, we can break into one of the sides of the geode and create extra pathways. Carving out the walls and adding a support so it looks like a doorway. And doing the same here. You will then want to carve out a hallway or a staircase or whatever necessary rooms that you need on this side of the geode. I recommend making the walls 4 high and replacing any blemishes in the walls with deep slate. You likely already have a way down into your geode, but you can add a different way down here in these side rooms, either with a staircase or with a ladder. So theoretically, this staircase would go all the way to the surface. Now that you have that done and the area carved out, I recommend taking some spruce and trying to tie this whole area in with the geode. You can do so by placing spruce trapdoors all along the trim of this hallway, making sure to replace where there's exposed spruce. This hallway is pretty plain, so we're going to add a little cutout here and add something here later. This hallway also dead ends here, but you can have it go anywhere you want. You can have it go down. Oh, there's diamonds. You can have it go down into the cave or anywhere else you like. In this geode scenario, the hallway opens up into another cave, so I've added a little balcony and a way down into the base of this cave. Now that we have the structure of our geode finished, we can decide whether we want to add more, like adding another entrance here to more rooms, or even expanding over here. If not, we can continue on into the functionality phase of the building process. Functionality includes sleeping, storage, crafting, smelting, and other various objects that we use while playing the game. Firstly, we need to decide where we would like to put our storage room, and down here seems like a good place. You can start by either using barrels or chests. It's entirely up to you and what your preference is, but in this tutorial we will be using barrels. The amount of barrels we use is completely dependent on your needs as you play. However, keep in mind this is a beginner base, so you can always expand in the future. I'm adding structure to the storage room by putting pillars wherever it seems necessary. Now that we have a decent sized storage room with plenty of barrels and a few chests and a crafting table, we can move on from this area and come back to it when we do detailing. Now on the main floor of the geode, we can add a furnace array. Placing the furnaces like this against each other and then placing a blast furnace here. You can also expand over here if you have a lot of room in your geode. If the upper floor of your geode feels a little cramped, you can always break away a few blocks. Placing your bed here. Filling in extra space with more geodes. Placing a cartography table here. Now that we've placed the basic things we need to function and play the game, we can move on to the detailing phase. To detail the kitchen, we can add carpets on top of the furnaces, adding deep slate walls to the top of the blast furnace, all the way up to the top where the geode ends. If you have a lot of extra space in our geode like we do here, you can add barrels to the tops in the kitchen, adding dark oak trapdoors underneath. Extra decorations include placing flower pot and item frames. You can also add details to the front of the barrels, like this. And I've also decided to remove the extra bits here, and I will instead replace it with some extra geode. You can also add carpet in front of the furnaces so that it ties in this area with the rest of the geode. Since we have a lot of open space in this particular geode, I've decided that I would like to add a pillar here. And a pillar here as well to help with the structure and give the geode proper support. In extra blank areas like this, we can add little desks or tables and fill them up with items or useful material. Placing signs against something bright like oak wood will help tie this in with the rest of the geode. We can then decorate it with flower pots and item frames with items inside them. To better frame the front door on the inside, you can add more elements of geode that you've collected to help tie it in with the rest of the geode. You can also place carpet here to help bring some of this purple onto the ground, which the rest of the geode is made out of. Moving to the back over here, we're going to cut out this wall and try to add some color. Replacing the back wall with some calcite, trimming the top with spruce, and replacing the bottom with spruce. We can then add some more oak to help break up the room, adding a flower pot, and putting a flower in it, then adding a lectern, and decorating the front of the oak with some spruce. You can add more carpet over here, which will later be used for lighting. You can also add carpet here to add a pop of color that relates to the red from the flower and the lectern. If you want to fill in this space here, you can add a bookshelf. Adding a barrel here We can also add a ring of signs around these pillars to help give them some different definition so they don't look so boring. Moving down into the storage room, we can add some more decor and lighting. We can do so by adding workstations like this to help with crafting, as well as adding jack-o'-lanterns along the front, and then putting brown carpet over top to conceal them. We can also add extra details like candles over here and up here. Another useful detail is using campfires as piles of wood. We can then add item frames to each of our barrels to distinguish which items go where. Moving up, we can now work on the top, which is the bedroom. Finishing off this desk area, we can add some dark oak stairs, as well as some spruce signs to tie it in with everything else. We can also add an item frame. And if you have the space, you can also add a chair. Moving on to the bed, you can add a barrel here, using signs to frame the bed, and if you want and have space, also trapdoors. You can also help close in the space a little more by placing more geode. We can add extra details like candles on the desk and a flower pot above the bed. If you want, you can also add a loom over here in this corner or somewhere up here so that you have a nice loom workstation. Maybe even covering the top with a carpet. Now that we've finished most of the detailing in the geode, we can work on lighting it up. We can do so with stuff like this. Having a chain, the lantern, putting more candles over here, and lighting them. The easiest way to add lighting is by hiding it, like under carpets. Like so. Moving away from the geode, we can go into the extra rooms, like this hallway. We can start by adding a bookshelf here to help tie it in with the rest of the geode base. Adding barrels at the bottom for more storage, and then decor at the top. We can also replace the flooring with spruce. In this cutout here, we can add more decor like a jukebox and a shelf, with a flower pot and some more candles. We can enhance our detailing by adding another item frame to help with the atmosphere. Make sure to replace any strange blocks with deep slate, so that the whole room is cohesive. You can also add hidden lighting underneath trapdoors in the hallways. Moving to the outside of the geode, we can work on the porch if you had to build one, placing simple details at the front of the porch to make the house feel more alive and welcoming. Looking at your geode and deciding if you're happy with it, you can also add extra details like supports or anything else that pops out to you like you feel needs to be added. With the final details complete, you have finished your geode and now have a home to live in. If you enjoyed this tutorial or followed along, make sure you give it some love and tell me down in the comments if you successfully created your own geode home.